What can history's most cunning mind teach you about power? Niccolò Machiavelli wasn't a king, but he wrote the rule book for rulers, tortured, exiled, betrayed, yet he turned downfall into legacy. His lessons aren't for the timid, they're for those who want to win. Here are 6 brutal, brilliant truths from the original master of strategy. Chapter 1. Play the long game. Quote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." Lesson: strategy beats speed. Always think in decades, not days. Niccolò Machiavelli wasn't born powerful. He wasn't rich. He didn't rule armies or command castles. But he understood something most men never learn. The true game is never played in days, or even years. It's played in decades. In 1512, everything collapsed. The Medici family stormed back into power in Florence, toppling the fragile republic Machiavelli had served for over a decade. Within weeks, he was arrested, tortured, and exiled. Most men would have crumbled, raged, plotted, or vanished into obscurity. But not Machiavelli. He did something far more dangerous. He waited. Instead of retaliating, he wrote. In the quiet of his exile, he put pen to paper and created The Prince, a book designed not for revenge, but resurrection. He dedicated it to the very Medici rulers who had ruined him, offering them cold-blooded, strategic advice on how to maintain absolute power. Many mistook this for flattery or desperation, but it was neither. It was Machiavelli's master move, a calculated attempt to make himself useful to the powerful once again. He wasn't trying to be liked. He was trying to be indispensable. And here's the twist. It worked. Not in his lifetime, but in history. The prince didn't just get him back in the game. It turned him into a legend. His name became a synonym for ruthless strategy. Politicians, CEOs, and warlords would study him for centuries. That's what playing the long game looks like. When the door slammed shut, Machiavelli didn't bang on it. He built a new entrance, out of words, wisdom, and time. Fun fact, in Renaissance Italy, a fall from power wasn't just a career problem, it was a death sentence. But Machiavelli wasn't the kind of man who fought back with swords. He adapted like a snake shedding skin, waiting for his next strike. And because of that, he survived and eventually thrived. In today's world of instant gratification, Machiavelli's lesson hits harder than ever. Everyone's chasing short-term wins, likes, clicks, quick profits. But the real players? They're thinking years ahead. They're setting up dominoes others don't even see. And when the moment comes, they strike fast. Not because they're impulsive, but because they already prepared. Power exercise. List 3 things you're reacting to emotionally this week. Maybe it's a person, a setback, or a fear. Now stop, zoom out. For each, ask, what's one move I'd make if I was thinking 5 years ahead, not 5 minutes? Write those moves down, then pick one and start it today. Because fortune favors not the fastest, but the most strategic. Chapter 2, Control the Narrative. Quote, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. Lesson, perception is power. Learn to manage your image like a weapon. When the world turned its back on Niccolò Machiavelli, he didn't complain. He rebranded. After being tortured and exiled from Florentine politics, Machiavelli could have faded into the background. Just another failed bureaucrat tossed aside in the ruthless chess game of Renaissance Italy. But instead he asked a bold question. What if I could rewrite the story of who I am? He was no longer in a position of power. He had no army, no influence, no title. But what he did have was a pen and a plan. He wrote The Prince not as a memoir, not as a cry for help, but as a calculated pivot. In those pages, Machiavelli didn't portray himself as a victim. He wrote like a master, cold, sharp, and utterly fearless. He offered advice to rulers on how to lie, betray, and manipulate their way to dominance. He described power as it really worked, not how the church or philosophers wanted it to. He made himself useful to the ruthless, and in doing so became something far more dangerous than a fallen politician. He became a myth. He turned failure into philosophy, disgrace into strategy. He didn't ask the world to change. He changed how the world saw him. And it worked. He died in obscurity, yes, but the prince outlived him by centuries. His name became immortal. Presidents, tyrants, and business moguls still quote him today. He wasn't remembered as a minor Florentine official. He was remembered as the godfather of realpolitik, the ultimate power coach. Fun fact, Machiavelli wasn't wealthy, popular, or even successful when he wrote The Prince. In fact, he was broke and banished. But the image he crafted, the tone, the sharp language, the fearless ideas, made people forget all of that. He didn't need status. He had story control. Here's the Machiavellian truth. It doesn't matter who you really are. It matters who the world thinks you are. Your reputation is your armor. Your persona is your weapon. If you don't control the narrative, someone else will, and they'll use it against you. Power exercise. Take 5 minutes. First, write down how people currently perceive you. Co-workers, friends, even strangers online. Be brutally honest. Now write how you want to be seen. Smarter? More powerful? More mysterious? Pick one small behavior shift that would move the needle. The way you speak, dress, post, or even the kind of work you share. Start that change today, because in the end, you are the brand. And Machiavelli proved, the best stories are the ones you write about yourself. Chapter 3. Make fear your ally. Quote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if one must choose." Lesson. Respect comes from strength, not kindness. In the ruthless world of Renaissance Italy, love was a luxury. Fear was a tool, and no one wielded that tool better than Cesare Borgia, the cold-blooded warlord who became Machiavelli's personal obsession. This was a man born into scandal, the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI. And yet he rose like a storm, crushing rivals, outmaneuvering enemies, and commanding loyalty through the one currency that never fails: fear. Machiavelli met Borgia during a diplomatic mission to Romagna. What he saw changed him forever. One story stood above the rest. Borgia had a lieutenant, Ramiro de Lorca, who was brutal, efficient, and dangerously popular. He kept order with an iron fist, and the people feared him. But Borgia, ever the tactician, understood something most rulers forget. When your enforcer becomes loved or too powerful, he becomes a threat. So Borgia invited Ramiro to a meeting and then had him publicly executed the same day. His body was left in the town square, cut in two, drenched in blood, as a message. It wasn't just punishment, it was performance, a display of dominance, a reminder to every citizen and soldier, no one is untouchable except me. And guess what? It worked. The region fell silent. Rebellion stopped. Borgia's power was absolute, for a time, and Machiavelli, he was awed. He would later write in The Prince that Borgia's ability to inspire fear, decisively, strategically, was something all rulers should study. Fun fact, Borgia's brutal rule wasn't madness, it was method. He cleaned up a lawless region, brought order, and even improved infrastructure. But he did it all under the shadow of terror. Machiavelli admired him not for cruelty, but for clarity. The clarity to do what weak men wouldn't. Let's be real. In today's world, we're taught to be nice, agreeable, likable. But being liked doesn't always lead to respect. Sometimes it leads to being overlooked or walked over. The hard truth Machiavelli pushes? If you can't be both feared and loved, choose fear. Not cruelty, not bullying, but presence. Power exercise. Think of one area in your life where you're being too nice to avoid conflict. Maybe you're letting a coworker take credit, avoiding hard conversations, or not setting boundaries. Now ask, what would a power move look like here? That doesn't mean yelling or being aggressive. It means being clear, firm, and uncompromising. Write it down, then make the move. Because fear, when used with precision, doesn't make you a villain, it makes you respected. Chapter 4, Burn the Bridge. Quote, "A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise." Lesson, don't be afraid to betray if the reward is survival or dominance. Loyalty sounds noble, but in the blood-soaked world of Renaissance Italy, loyalty was just a temporary convenience, a tool, not a virtue. Machiavelli saw it firsthand. One moment, alliances were sworn with elaborate oaths. The next, knives were being drawn in candlelit rooms. And while the poets and priests called it treachery, Machiavelli called it strategy. Because in high-stakes power games, those who cling to dying loyalties get buried with them. He watched dukes, mercenaries, and cardinals swear eternal friendship in the morning, then sell each other out by sunset. It wasn't personal, it was survival. And in The Prince, Machiavelli made his position crystal clear. A smart ruler keeps promises only when it serves his interests. When it doesn't, break them, cleanly, quickly, and without regret. One of the most cunning examples? The endless dance between city-states like Florence, Milan, and Venice, each switching sides in the blink of an eye, betraying yesterday's ally for today's advantage. One week, Florence would back France. The next, they'd conspire with Spain. It was chaos, and Machiavelli didn't just observe it. He studied it like a surgeon studies wounds. He learned that burning a bridge wasn't a weakness. It was sometimes the only way to move forward. Fun fact, Renaissance Italy made Game of Thrones look like a bedtime story. Alliances were made and broken so frequently that ambassadors often carried two letters, one declaring friendship and one declaring war, just in case. Machiavelli never wept for the broken promises. He didn't worship honor, he worshipped results. To him, a prince who broke a promise but kept his throne was far wiser than a noble fool who kept his word and lost his head. In your own life, think about it. How many things are you still holding on to out of guilt, obligation, or fear? An old partnership? A dying project? A promise you made when you were a different person? Sometimes the most powerful move is not to fix the bridge, but to torch it. Power exercise. Name one bridge in your life that's holding you back. Maybe it's a person you've outgrown, a project that drains you, or a commitment that no longer serves you. Now ask, what would it take to walk away? What could you gain if you freed up that energy, time, or emotional space? Write it down. Then take one small, irreversible step away from it this week, because in a world of shifting loyalties, true power belongs to those who know when to walk away and never look back. Chapter 5. Don't depend on luck. Quote, "Fortune is a woman, and it is necessary if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force." Lesson. Stop waiting for fate, seize control, or be left behind. To Machiavelli, fortune wasn't some divine reward for patience. It wasn't a gift for the virtuous. No, it was a wild, untamed force, like a river in flood or a furious storm. Wait for it to be kind, and it would drown you. But if you grabbed it by the throat, if you acted boldly, you might just ride it to power. He called fortune a woman not to romanticize her, but to make a point. She favors the bold, not the cautious, not the hesitant, not the ones who wait for everything to line up. Those who hesitated were crushed, but those who seized the moment, even if the odds were imperfect, bent fortune to their will. Nowhere was this more clear than in Machiavelli's own city, Florence. Florence was a city constantly tossed between freedom and tyranny. One moment it was a proud republic, the next it was under Medici control. Armies marched, kings schemed. The French, the Spanish, the Papal States all played their games across Italian soil. Everyone prayed for luck. Few took action. But Machiavelli believed in virtue, not virtue as we know it, but a kind of ruthless, manly courage, the willingness to act decisively in uncertain times, to force the world to respond rather than wait for it to deliver. He admired leaders who grabbed their fate like a sword, men like Cesare Borgia, who didn't wait for alliances to fall into place. He struck first, or like Julius II, the warrior pope, who led armies himself when others dithered. To Machiavelli, the lesson was brutal but clear. You wait, you lose. The world won't hand you your moment. You take it, sometimes by kicking the door in. Fun fact, Machiavelli once compared fortune to a violent river that floods the land, but he noted that clever men build dams and channels during calm times. They prepare for chaos instead of praying it won't come. Think about your own life. How many things are you waiting to do? Waiting for the right time, waiting for the right partner, waiting until you feel ready. Machiavelli would say, that's fear, not strategy. Power exercise. Write down one thing you've been putting off until the time is right. A bold move, a creative project, a confrontation, a decision. Now stop waiting. Choose one action, any step forward, no matter how small, and schedule it this week. Send the email, make the call, start the draft. Because while others wait for permission, Machiavellians make their move. Fortune rewards the ones who force the moment. Chapter 6, Adapt or Perish. Quote, whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Lesson, be water. Those who survive chaos are those who evolve. Niccolò Machiavelli lost everything. When the powerful Medici family stormed back into Florence and overthrew the Republic, they didn't just take power, they took his career, reputation, and voice. Once a trusted diplomat, Machiavelli was stripped of his title, imprisoned, tortured, and exiled. Most men would have vanished, retired to bitterness, died forgotten. Not Machiavelli. He understood the first rule of survival, adapt or perish. When the world changes, you must too, or be crushed under the weight of your own rigidity. So he pivoted. No more politics? Fine. He turned to writing. In exile, Machiavelli became a literary machine, cranking out sharp comedies, essays, and of course, his masterpiece, The Prince. He used humor to stay visible in court circles. He hosted dinners, mingled with farmers and nobles alike, studied history, and sharpened his mind like a blade. Not because it was easy, but because he knew his story wasn't over. He didn't wait for permission to reinvent himself. Even as the Medici ignored his requests for a second chance, Machiavelli remained a chameleon, shifting roles, changing tone, adapting language, learning from the present and past. He wasn't clinging to who he used to be. He was preparing for who he might still become. Fun fact, though Machiavelli was never restored to public office, his influence outlived the Medici. They ruled Florence for another generation. He became immortal. That's the power of reinvention. See, the world doesn't stay still. Neither can you. What once worked, the strategies, mindsets, even careers, can become traps if you don't evolve. It's not about betraying who you are. It's about upgrading your version. A tiger that can swim doesn't stop being a tiger. It just becomes more dangerous. Too many people stay loyal to outdated dreams, routines, or identities. They cling to them even when the world has shifted. Machiavelli didn't do that. He flowed with the current, changed direction, and found power in the very place he'd been thrown from. Power exercise. What's one outdated idea, habit, or skill you're still clinging to? Something that's no longer serving you in today's reality? Be honest. Now choose one to either upgrade or drop in the next 7 days. If it's an old belief, challenge it with new action. If it's a skill that's no longer useful, replace it with one that is. If it's a role or identity that's expired, write down what the new version of you looks like. Because survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most adaptable. And Machiavelli proved, if you can evolve, you'll outlive kings.